Alright, draft physics video. More fun with the zealots and such. That's all this is. I mean, it's just more and more obvious. I mean, if this is, this is all you get in terms of commentary. And so if you wonder if the fans are this corrupt, you know, the players are probably just as bad in terms of their devotion to the theory. you know. So the reverse guy responds to my challenge that he explain what exactly how he thinks the evidence is so strong that we have to exclude any conversation. Just a final clarification of the actual quote, as the title of the video is slightly misleading. Well, it's not at all misleading, but anyway. When are you going to realize that science isn't an open discussion like philosophy is? Well, I pointed out examples of other science discussions that were open. Like I said, open to the idea that if you fit the evidence, you win. And that's all Gould did, was fit the evidence, and he won. There wasn't any reason to say, we're not going to listen to you because it's a challenge in some way to what we believe. All you do is fit the evidence. He didn't have to predict anything, didn't have to bring any personal bag of evidence with him. He just had to have a better theory that fit the evidence better. And certainly mine fits those qualifications. Jackass. So then he goes on to say, quoting himself, that data and confirmation is paramount. Confirmation again by what standard? Confirmation that it fits the evidence and is more explanatory. I've fit the evidence and explaining processes you have no explanation for, like magnetism. Not abstract ideas. So again, whether the idea is anything you would want to call an abstract is irrelevant as long as the idea fits the evidence better, is less abstract than the current contender. Your current contender couldn't be more abstract, in my opinion, as most of the forces in your theory are angels. Huygens angels. Alright, so I'm not going to bother reading Superior Mind, and the James guy threw in some stuff, but I won't bother with that. I'll just do the counter arguments to them, which are rubbish. Superior Mind, wrong. Reverse is, so this is some guy called Fuck You Tube. And yes, he's going to be blocked because he's, he makes claims he can't defend, and then he sits there and says, we the people requiring a little bit of evidence that he doesn't have are the ones he can assume to have some sort of cognitive dissonant problem, when clearly it's him. He's the one with some obligation. He's defending the position that his theory is so good that he can exclude any conversation about any alternatives. Yeah, he's not defending that. Alright, Superior Mind, wrong. Reverse is not arguing from the fact that draft science is not mainstream. Well, that's all he's arguing from, frankly. Frankly, if any other mainstream scientists had come up with this theory, then they'd have to deal with it. And frankly, they wouldn't be able to. So that scientist would be doing very well right now. Would have very high points on his side. Very high. We're assuming that you are holding the evidence in mind. So here we go. We're assuming that you are holding the evidence in mind, whatever that means, that has been brought up thousands of times already. What evidence? You mean Piro's fake single slit waves? What evidence do you have? I mean, you keep claiming you've presented evidence that is so stunning and so powerful that no one could possibly say, well, that's kind of, it's kind of lame. So he's going to post links to pretty much crap, right? I mean, where the article describing the experiment states, well, it's like looking at an ant walking across a quarter from 1,500 miles away. Oh, yeah, well, that's, good luck with that experiment. Nice. Yeah, I'm sure you're going to find hard evidence that way. I mean, fuck. For you to miss that is like a juror being critical of a lawyer's closing arguments and believing them to be built on a fallacious argument. Now he's going to talk about there's not vagaries in trials from ignorance because it makes declarations that are the opposing argument. I shouldn't even bother with this guy's comments because this is just the stupidest thing ever written, just about. Has no facts to back it up. This isn't lawyers closing arguments, but regardless, the idea that it is a trial is obvious, and you're saying you have decisive evidence. You would kill people because of your belief. You would put their lives at risk based on that evidence. Watching an ant walk across a quarter from 1,500 miles away. That kind of evidence is the kind of evidence you'd kill somebody over. We're supporting this. We're supposing this is the case where the standard of evidence is a preponderance of evidence. Well, again, I can't say you have absolutely no unification theory. I have a unification theory. You don't see how that's completely, I win? Mine unifies, yours doesn't. That's a preponderance thing. Mine has preponderance of unificatability. Yours has no unificatability. Mine combines all the forces and it matches all the evidence. Except I saw it from 1,500 miles away. I saw that ant walk across the quarter. Except for that evidence. Mine matches all the hard evidence. The stuff that's really proven. Fuck. You're just amazing. Let's see. Preponderance of the evidence. Although in reality, scientists lay the burden of proof always on the side making a claim. And again, you think you've matched the burden of proof to exclude other conversation. This is about the conversation you're saying you don't have to have because your evidence is so strong. Fuck. Amazing. You haven't defeated my argument by saying there's no evidence. You haven't done that because it fits all the evidence. I mean, you're just insane. You're saying you don't have to listen. You're saying you just close your ears. You don't have to listen. But I'm being generous for the sake of discussion. Well, you're being an asshole for the sake of your zealotry, which at this point has devolved into calling the other side stupid. Well, you're worse than stupid. You're a fucking liar. But, whatever. You haven't demonstrated any evidence. You keep saying you brought up something thousands of times. What have you brought up thousands of times? What have you even brought up 100 times? What have you even brought up 10 times that hasn't been already argued and dispensed with as valid, as conclusive proof of something? What evidence do you fucking have, jackass? Let me see it. Fucking lying scum. Anyway. Which is exactly what you'd expect in most discussions like this. Well, you'd only expect it because you're zealots. That's why most of these discussions can't take place, because you can't just argue and say, like to a truther or something. You just say, hey, look, that argument was disposed of, and you know it, right? I can take you right to the hard evidence. You didn't do that. You didn't take me to any hard evidence. I mean, for every one of these close encounter, let's go look at it. Okay, so, well, I'll get to it. The link is posted excess to this argument. So anyway, so the James guy asked for links. He doesn't get any, of course. So I'll go further. Here's another fuck you comment. James, why do you have to quote so much of the commenter's words? Well, there's nothing wrong with quoting. So I think that's a stupid complaint. Because it is about what you're saying, asshole. We can read them right above the response, genius. Yes, but he's talking about specific things you say in your paragraphs, asshole. You can't figure that out? All I can say is it doesn't matter whether I can prove to your satisfaction. Well, I wasn't asking you to prove to my satisfaction. I was asking you to explain your standard of proof. which seems to me to be, well, any weak evidence for my side is good, and any strong evidence for your side is bad. You don't give a shit about the quality of the evidence. You just care about what side it's defending, your God theory. Whether bent space is a thing, I don't care. So, I mean, it doesn't matter whether I can prove to your satisfaction. So again, we're not saying that it's to our satisfaction. We're saying explain how you're satisfied. Explain how you think, as a rational person, you have sufficient evidence to be an obnoxious, patronizing, arrogant fuck. Saying things like, we don't have to listen. Whether bent space is a thing. All I have to do is show that bent space model predicts. So again, we're back to this predict crap. The script for The Time Machine, right, the movie, was written before Einstein. Before Einstein's theory. The relationship between velocity and time wasn't just pulled out of nowhere by Einstein. He declared he predicted it. It was already a thing, asshole. You don't get that? Okay. The space model predicts more than any model where space is not bent. Well, again, and I could just go on to the precession of Mercury. Precession of Mercury is completely, it has nothing to do with bending space. It has to do with recognizing that gravity is an inductive force. That you have to create some to get some, kind of a thing. It's something done by two players. That was what was Einstein's theory. That's what made it mean something. He forced there to be two players. It has nothing to do with bent space. The precession of Mercury. Anyway, so these predictions you're saying that are great predictions, the whole argument is about the quality of those predictions. And his prediction that light is a material body that can be bent in gravity, and that it's not a force, that's under argument, because the evidence isn't obvious. It isn't so strong you just can't deny it. It's in fact quite conflicting. Why isn't there lensing in all the places we know there's heavy gravity? Places where there's lots of black space, lots of liberality, and yet the lensing isn't happening. Why? Anyway, predicts more than any model where space is not bent. Well, again, this prediction thing, it doesn't mean much, in my opinion. It means absolutely nothing, actually, because you're not associating something fundamental to the theory, one of these predictions. So, show me a prediction that's fundamental to the theory. Clearly it satisfies this. Well, that's your opinion. Clearly, I'd say, is nonsense, a word that is nonsense to use in this circumstance. There is no clear satisfaction of any condition where you have to have bent space to make the prediction. You don't get this because you're not paying any attention to what reverse has puked onto these boards, been saying. He hasn't been saying anything but rubbish. And you haven't paid any attention to what scientists say they're trying to do, which is to use evidence and data rather than 2,000-year-old notions about ontology. So again, Gould's theory was just a 2,000-year-old notion of ontology. Right? Because it didn't predict anything and didn't bring any new evidence. Just a rubbish argument. Show one part of my theory that has to do with something 2,000 years old. Ontological notions of function are dead. Well, so he's saying reality. He doesn't believe in reality, and so he doesn't want anybody to talk about reality, and so you're just proving you're a zealot. Now we know your agenda. Material universe isn't a possibility because we're magic people. Clearly you're the zealot with the predefined agenda. Clearly I'm not the zealot, as I had no agenda but to find a better answer than silly shit like photons have radar. Yeah. They're definitely illogical, probably demented. So there's nothing else to say, really, is there? I mean, I don't... Fuck you, that's idiotic. You don't think things happen for cause and effect reasons. Okay, you're an idiot. Alright, then there was a couple more whatevers, but that doesn't really matter. I thought this was the one where the links were, but I guess not. Must be his next idiotic, pointless contribution. But we'll just move on to mindless since it's the next one on the list. Emendum, can you describe the Michelson-Morley experiment? Question mark. Well, you want me to... I'll go to the Wikipedia page. How about that? And we'll go right through the page and point out all the bullshit in it. How's that? What was the purpose? They were ether nuts. What were they trying to find and why? They were trying to find the speed of the Earth. What exactly were they measuring and why? They were measuring something fake, is what it turns out to be, because they were measuring two distorted light beams. And so all they were really measuring was that you can wiggle the mirrors and the beams would go woo 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 woo. But this doesn't. They were making a noise detector, but not a very good one. Not nearly as precise as they thought. Draft science. How about you describing how beam splitters work? Do they produce identical beams of light? Of course, I mean identical in the general sense. I mean beams of light that can be recombined rationally to observe any differences in where they've been. Or do they create two beams of light that are fundamentally different right from the moment of creation? The diffraction problem. So fuck you contributes, which will be no doubt not anywhere close to the subject. If scientists are like 1,000 times smarter than you, like how they demonstrate that? Exactly. Right, because they believe in many worlds. Don't you think they'd notice this stuff? Don't you think they'd noticed if spinning a laser through one-way mirror made the beam deflect into a kaleidoscope of different beams? Well, again, we're talking about Michelson-Morley, so you want to change the experiment. Michelson-Morley used a diffraction gradient as a beam splitter. Don't you think they'd think to check this stuff? Well, how do they check it? It's stuff moving the speed of light. They just made assumptions. Einstein just guessed at light being material. He guessed wrong. And again, what does that have to do with anything? I didn't bring up the subject. You did, assholes. I know in your head when you watch the experiment and you see the circles on the wall, you think those are formed by the laser going through the one-way mirror and not because the two beams are recombining. Well, I mean, it's proven fact that it's being created by the beam splitter, because even when they don't combine the beams, they're already ringed. They're ringed by the beam splitter, idiot. Before they're combined, they're already ringed. God, you're stupid. But that's just bollocks. The two beams have the same phase, and the pattern is the beams combining to form the interference pattern on the wall. Well, that's just absolute nonsense. So you obviously haven't watched the MIT laser videos, because you can see it before they're recombined, the beam is already ringed. If the two beams weren't in phase, there'd be no pattern. No, that's not true. There is a pattern. The point is the pattern matching is what they're doing. All this has been explained before. No, you can't explain it. That's impossible for you to explain it, because it's just fundamentally untrue. You're wrong. Yeah. All this has been explained before, but cognitive dissonance gets in the way because instinctively you know why this blows your theory to bits. Well, first off, it doesn't blow anything to bits in terms of my theory. I mean, why don't you explain how that works? How exactly, if light, let's say you're right, and Copenhagen is correct, what does that have to do with anything relevant to the gravity and magnetism? Oh, that's right, not a damn thing. No, I'm trying to demonstrate how your theories are wrong by pointing out stupid things you believe for no good reason are wrong, and just as a demonstration of how you fail. Turning light into a wave does nothing to my theory, frankly. Nothing at all. I think it's just plain stupid. You know, it's just plain stupid. It's not a wave. It's quanta. Dummy. Einstein proved that. Yeah. I'm an idiot. Alright. So then fuck you says, "You're so full of shit, I don't believe it. You're going to ignore that telescopes have done precisely the experiment you want done with the Hubble." So again, this isn't that complicated, right? I mean, the only reason why they do the experiment on an eclipse is because of the earthbound problem. Okay? The atmosphere ruins the fun. You can't look near the sun because the atmosphere during the day. You can't use a telescope during the day. It can't work because too much light's getting in your telescope. It's just useless. You can only use telescopes on Earth at night to look at stars. So you can't do the experiment when the sun's where you can look at it. Can't look at it when it's not there. Get it? Shithead. And so we're talking about space-based telescopes. And the Hubble is just a well-made piece of crap. Why not use it for this purpose? But as I've pointed out, you could put a 10-inch telescope, which is, I think, as big as the one Eddington used, on the space station. I'm sure the space station has a decent telescope on it right now. I'm sure it has a pretty good telescope. And it's got no atmosphere problem. So it can do the experiment any day it wants to. Doesn't have to wait for eclipses, doesn't have to do any of that bullshit. And it's closer too, it makes it even better. But I'm just saying, it's there to be grabbed. If it's the truth, why aren't they showing us the truth? In marvelous cinematic video, we can actually watch the sun, the solar object, pop out and then go backwards and then go forward again. We can watch it happen. Why aren't they videoing that for us? And your explanation is bullshit. Alright, just because they weren't the most powerful telescopes we have means you reject the evidence. I'm just saying that the most powerful telescopes don't do you any good because they can't look near the sun during the day. So you just keep ignoring the argument. I'm not the one arguing you have to have a big telescope. I'm arguing that you have to point it at the right place. It's similar to how you expect the LIGO to be put to the use of detecting earthquakes. I don't expect it to. I'm just saying it's a preposterous waste of money to go looking for these stupid gravitational waves made out of wrong theory. So, I mean, it's your theory that mass can be converted into attractive gravity force. Well, I think that's a silly theory, for which there's no evidence. Einstein would have laughed at that and said, "What are you, crazy?" As if current seismometers don't work good enough. Well, I'm just saying it's quite obviously the most sensitive vibration detecting device ever created by mankind. So to say that seismographs, not seismometers, are up to the task, well, why not use the best instrument ever made for the purpose? That's like saying I don't have a supercomputer, so how could I ever trust? Well, you're really stupid. There's nothing special about a supercomputer, by the way. Are correct when I do my taxes. So you think that the detecting earthquakes has no value to go any deeper. You go this deep and you don't dig any deeper. It's doing your taxes. Nothing more complicated to look for. I would argue that there's lots of sounds the earth is making right now that if we probably understood those sounds, we could probably detect earthquakes better. Undefined particles, kind of like how you say tons, question mark. I'm calling them something explicit, and I've explicitly explained what they do. They're not undefined. They're defined by the fact that they move in the speed of light. Idiot. Particles that don't have to obey Newton's laws of momentum, as was pointed out. They're a force. They obviously don't obey the laws of what forces do to matter. The force doesn't obey the same laws as the material bits. If you're too stupid to understand that, you're really, really dumb. The forces are what the law is written about. The force is the thing Newton's laws are identifying as the mechanism causing the effect, idiot. The cause of the effect can't be one of the effects, idiot. Wow, you're dumb. You claim that tons don't... I mean, this is just desperate, right? I mean, how desperate can you get? I mean, to imply that there's some reason why I should be impressed by somebody arguing that forces should behave like matter, I should somehow not mock that as idiotic? I mean, how can you use that as an argument? You think that's going to somehow make me unstable? Like, look, oh wow, you really rocked my boat by showing me that I have to make Newton's laws of motion regarding material objects. I have to make those laws apply to force, which Einstein doesn't do, nor does quantum mechanics do, because it would be stupid. Profoundly stupid. Anyway. You claim that tons don't change mass or speed, yet they impart a force. Yeah, well, it's pretty obvious what I said is that's right. They're moving the speed of light, and they're a thing. That would mean they violate conservation of momentum by a fucking cunt definition. So again, I can't make it any clearer. I don't understand. Conservation of momentum is violated how? The force goes in, the little force bit, gets absorbed as part of the thing. I've already explained all this. I don't have to do it again. That's idiotic. This is just obnoxious rubbish. You think this is a counter-argument? I mean, I've made this as explicit as I can. I've drawn it as fucking arrows. There's no violation of conservation, so you're just a pitiful liar. Point out the exact violation. Or fuck you, this is bullshit. Let's see, anyway. Except they don't really because it's kinetic. Well, if you understand what a kinetic is, then you'll understand that's how it works. The two steel balls bounce off of each other. And if I put the steel balls in space, they'll do it even longer. And if I make the strings out of something completely incapable of stretching, they'll bounce even longer. Yeah. Idiot. That's another thing that came up was heat. Heat is an interesting thing. Because light is basically just heat. Right? We call it something else, but I mean it's just another form of heat. The whole electromagnetic spectrum is essentially just a form of heat. That's all it is. It's just stuff that's broken, flying out of the atoms as you jiggle them, as you move them, you shake them up, you break the bonds, and the bits fly out. That's all it is. It's just heat. Anyway, you claim the tons don't change mass or speed, yet they impart force. That would mean they violate. No, they don't. Except they don't really because it's kinetic. Oh, except they do because we won't go into any detail. Well, I've gone into tons of detail as to how this happens. We just declare this. So again, I don't know. I can only draw the pictures. You don't understand two arrows going opposite directions. You don't understand complete interactions. Okay, I don't know what to say. It's too complex for you. Okay. I think you're pathetic. Like extremely pathetic. Alright, also it's been pointed out that elastic collisions equals the forces cancel out and there wouldn't be gravity. Well, that's just absolute nonsense. You haven't pointed out any such thing. You haven't proven it. So this is your evidence. I'm saying it's as lame can be because you have absolutely no evidence that force is ever destroyed in anything I said. It's clearly not. The force goes in, the material thing moves. How has the force gone away? It's just such a lie. I mean, it's disgusting that you can say something like that. That you can do that without realizing what a creature you are, what a scummy human being you are. To sit there and pretend I haven't completely eliminated any such nonsense as a viable argument. But you continue to say they always go light speed. Yeah, that's the rule, like photons always go light speed, asshole. Not a big surprise. You see photons bounce off a mirror, they're still going light speed, right, asshole? How about they do this without violating conservation of momentum? Yeah, I think photons do that. They bounce off of a mirror and they don't violate conservation of momentum, jackass. Truth. Fact. Suppose we change the subject. To what? Something else you'll lie about, because you're a preposterous liar. Oh, but what about the friction problem? I've already been there and done that. Never mind about that. Well, again, so these are you're just lying. I mean, I've made whole videos on the subject. You don't get it. Fine. You're too stupid to understand. Fine. I said the word kinetic. That sounds like undefined particles to me, jackass. Okay, so pool balls on a space table is too much for you. You can't imagine such a thing. You can't imagine solid hard things bouncing into each other and exchanging the forces they possess. Too much for you. You're just such a waste of time. Let's see. So it says, so James requires him to provide a reference to his claims. And it says, Google it, meathead. Fuck you. Solving morons. I don't know what solving morons is. Maybe meant muons? I don't know. Yeah, you got nothing. And then he says, there, I Googled something for you. So he provides a link to an experiment where they're looking at a white dwarf, okay, and a star behind the white dwarf. And they describe the experiment as watching an ant cross a quarter at 1,500 miles. So they're conceding the point. Okay, and the funny thing is, the white dwarf, they're trying to estimate its mass by how much deflection there is. And so they estimate its mass as 68% of the sun's. So, so it's even less lensing than we should expect from the sun, because it's 32% less gravitational. It has less gravity, 32% less gravity. And it still has the same corona problem, of course, of scatter, but we'll just pretend scatter doesn't exist. But anyway, so by the argument made in the fact that they're looking at a white dwarf, a billion light years away or something, and doing lensing experiments, and they're coming up with numbers they say are such and such precise, means that they really should be able to detect lensing at least 2 or 3 solar radians away from the sun then, if they think they have that kind of precision. So why don't they do that? Oh, that's right, because they can't, because it will confirm the fact that this is all bullshit. Alright. And then the second one he linked to, which also isn't proof that they've already done the Hubble experiment or anything comparable to the Hubble, he links to the 1975 experiment, which again, the data doesn't prove anything. I mean, it's not this, it barely gets over its margin of error. Well, it doesn't get over its margin of error. That's why relying on solar eclipses is just really dangerous, because you're just stuck with the weather. if they have shitty weather on the 21st, in the Pacific region, all this is going to be bullshit, right? All this hype. Anyway, so he posts that link. I say, precisely the experiment you want done with the Hubble. That's a quote of him. I suggest Hubble look at space around the 32% larger sun. Our 32% larger sun. It's been explained to you a million times that the Hubble cannot be pointed at our sun. It would fry. So again, the same bogus argument. The fact is the space next to the sun is pitch fucking black. There's no leakage from the sun. So as long as the Hubble doesn't go encroaching into the sun, it'll have no problem. And the Hubble telescope is one of the most controllable, precise instruments we have in space. It has no problem being able to look at things without jumping some idiotic place or doing something idiotic. It doesn't get bounced around. So it's just a bogus argument. The space right next to the sun is black as black could be. Safe, safe, safe. Very safe. It could just creep up behind the sun. No problem. So nothing's been explained. These are just silly excuses. So I say, newsflash. You don't have to point it at the sun. You point it at the black space next to the sun. And so then he says, I'm glad you have done the exact calculations to ensure that it wouldn't fry. Well, I can do I can give you the exact calculations, which are, there's absolutely no sunlight next to the sun. The sun creates light in one direction. None of the photons going in any other direction can possibly get into this Hubble telescope. It can't see the light going sideways. So yes, very safe. So then I say, I'm sure they have a decent telescope on the space station they could use. That has a that has the major Earth limit. They could use that. I should have put a big comment in there. I'm sure they have a decent telescope on the space station they could use. They could use that, comma, as the major Earth limitation of scatter would be eliminated. So again, this whole thing is about scatter. So you don't have scatter in space. So you can look at stuff and you see it exactly the way it is, not all fucking distorted. And again, I'll just point out, you don't need a very big telescope to do the experiment. Why have they not done that? Question mark. And I'm sure the answer will be off the subject. So then you post a link to the other crap, the 75 experiment. I quote him again, precisely the experiment you want done with the Hubble. Not even close. An incomplete argument with no data and no Hubble. Keep posting rubbish and you'll be blocked. So then he says, you show your true colors, Gary. You're not into truth. You're only religious devotion to pre-Newtonian mechanics. Well, I don't know about pre-Newtonian. I think Newton did fairly well, actually. Because he wasn't a reckless daydreamer like modern scientists. They don't bother with being cautious. Newton was cautious. He said what he knew. He didn't say what he thought. Just the one. Geez, I should have said you're the one just shown to be lying for your truth. And that's the fact. So you keep claiming you have all this evidence, and where's the evidence? That's right, we don't get to see it. The hard evidence. And if I ask you to explain why this evidence seems so compelling to you, where so compelling as you will ignore anything else. Burbs and snurks. Snurks and burbs. Robbie Josephson. Well, I won't block you, but I'm going to delete that. I don't know, useless mush. Why do people live for their useless mush? So James points out another link. Reference question mark. I don't understand exactly what he's doing there. No clue. Yeah, I mean, see, he's got a response to the fuck YouTube guy, and he just reposts the same link and says reference. It is a reference. I mean, it's a reference without any details, but it's a reference. Anyway. Um, okay, so here we go. I'm not sure. I'm sure they have a decent telescope on the space station they could use. So I make that comment. Now the scary coat guy says, maybe because there are tons of other pieces of evidence that prove GR. So again, they just keep talking about the tons and tons of evidence they have. And when you go through the evidence, it's as lame as their two-slit experiment evidence. And they have more important things to do than prove something. Oh, okay, that's already been proven. So that pretty much says it, right? I mean, it's a key thing, this idea of light being bent, and in terms of their theory, and just for a lot of other reasons, it's something they should get nailed down. Get it precisely nailed down. I'm with precise equations. Get it all, get the evidence so you know exactly how much it's bent, so you can see if it conforms to Einstein's predictions and all that stuff. So why wouldn't you want really good evidence? And so instead of being rational and saying, yes, that makes sense to get really good evidence, this idiot says, no, everything's just fine, we don't need to bother. It's not an interesting subject. We're so convinced by our 400 light-year across lenses in space, and we're so convinced by the non-existent evidence of any black holes in space because we don't see any of them doing anything like lensing, which they should be doing all over the place, that we don't need to bother. Because it's all proven science. I mean, spoken like a true zealot. Don't even ask a question like, where'd Abel's wife come from? Don't even ask the question. No, we don't need to know. God took care of that. He made a wife for him. I edited my comment, by the way, but regardless, I have heard that there will be many people examining the 2017 ellipse for GR, including non-physicists. And again, yes, let's have some more amateurs do it wrong. That'll be so spectacular. Now that you have that excuse that it's only being bent by the corona, however. Well, you'll certainly be able to. I'm just saying, if somebody gets an image of one that's a half, like say a half of a solar radian, would probably be enough to be well out of the corona. I mean, well out of the corona being able to produce a strong image. I mean, lensing should produce a weaker. Scatter should produce a weaker image, one would assume. But it does get complicated because of the fact that the sun is magnetic, and the scatter is going to probably have an arrangement to it. I already explained this stuff. You don't think there are reasonable explanations? You don't think it's possible that the charged particles around the sun could be in field lines? You don't think that's possible? Jesus Christ, these people are just... I wonder if that's what you'll use when the results come in. I've already made the argument. I mean, if you think you know best, I'd say, yes, it's better to look at dark objects than objects that are producing a whole bunch of ions, because we know that those bend light. I mean, you don't see the reason in it? We already know that particles in an atmosphere will bend light. We can see that with our own eyes. We can watch the atmosphere twist and heat, and we watch it bend the light. So we know that a bunch of radiation isn't the best place to test for gravitational lensing. But that's not a reasonable argument to make? Oh. Be better to look at space where there's lots of gravity because you're watching stuff moving around the gravity. So pick one of those spots that aren't on fire. Okay, anyway. There are tons of other pieces of evidence that prove JR, including eclipses, whatever that means. Well, let's see, JM says, do you have even an ounce of evidence that this proves scary hypothesis? Alright, so then he says, do you have an ounce of evidence that this proves God? So he's again saying that my argument is the extraordinary one. I'm the one claiming bent space, virtual photons, and magic radar for photons. I'm the one making the extraordinary invisible man claims, And they're the ones with this rock-solid, hard mechanical thing. When, yes, the truth is the two are exactly the opposite. That's right. They're the ones defending the invisible man. I'm the one defending, no, this rock. Rock. Really easy to understand. It's a rock. Anyway, or that a leprechaun on the dark side of the moon is controlling the universe. And there's something different about you saying Ben Space is doing it. So Ben Space is somehow not a leprechaun. The geometry did it! You know, that power geometry did it. Well, you know, geometrists. Yeah, geometrists did it. I mean, you see how this is like laughably stupid. You shouldn't even bring up like leprechauns and angels or anything else, because that just slides right into invisible men. And all of your forces are invisible men. The magic magneton. It's an invisible man, idiot. Do you understand the burden of proof? Definitely not. Yeah, you obviously don't understand common, irrational, proper identification. I mean, you're the one with the theory that relies on something that can't be disproved. Mine's the one that can be. I'd also just like to point out that you are the biggest troll of all. Well, whatever. You're the troll. You're the asshole claiming you have something called evidence. Strong evidence. So strong that I can ridicule. No, not even close. Let's see. So that's probably enough. Let's see. How about describing how a beam splitter? Yeah, we already did that. No extra stuff there. So, enough done. Yeah, Holiday made another douchebag video, but I probably won't play it. I don't know. We'll just see how bored I get. But the second there's somebody else, you know, I can find anyone else to have a conversation with in terms of videos, yeah, Holiday's got no seat in the car. He's the last friend you call, like after you went through every single person in the yearbook. You know, the last guy you date, you know, whatever. Just he's the bottom of the fucking scum barrel. Such a useless prick. But anyway, eventually I think there'll be some people who are interested in creating some sort of conversations between people that'll be a hell of a lot more interesting than anything he'll introduce into a conversation. But he says, Eminem daft science is uneducated rambling. And again, he'll demonstrate that by rambling badly and saying nothing insightful. No doubt. But, I mean, 21 minutes. But yeah, watching him makes me want to puke. I mean, physically be ill. He is just such a disgusting piece of shit. Ugh. Just the most revolting human I think I have encountered. And I've encountered some revolting trolls.